So, Amie,
Zachary.
Avery,
Yes.
when you were a child, when you were a baby, if you will, did you ever go to one of the elderly's house and find that their toilet had a carpet cover on top of it?
Oh, my
Is this a
parents had
thing?
that.
Your parents, okay. Avery, have you ever seen one of these?
I have.
You're familiar with the concept of a carpeted
Yeah.
toilet top?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you get toilet top and the lid. You get both.
You can get the lid
Get the
carpeted?
lid.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, that's even more unnerving. I haven't seen one in a very long time, but I had this like sensory memory as I was going potty over the weekend, where I was thinking like, I haven't seen one of those, and I'm so glad that I haven't seen one of those, because when I tell you that must be the most unsanitary carpet in Christendom, like
I would hope that you wash it like every time you clean the bathroom, but
do you think that my grandmother was I'm gonna cut that. Do you think my grandmother I'm not gonna call it my grandmother like that. Do you think my grandmother was washing that carpet with like a drug doctor that often?
well, she could throw it in the wash. Those things look washable. You just toss it in with your towels.
I
bet
don't
she
know,
was.
man.
I'm gonna say your
Not you.
grandmother
Not
was.
you defending carpeted bathrooms right now.
Yeah, I didn't realize Amie Rivers, star of stage and screen, was a carpet stan, a carpet bathroom stan.
And my parents had put carpet in their bathroom. I remember
On
that.
the toilet seat?
They on the floor.
On the
They had
floor.
carpet, and they had the toilet seat cover and the toilet lid cover.
You ever seen a
Oh.
carpeted bathroom, Zachary?
Once in a bar, and it made me so unhappy.
In a bar?
In a bar, and not just any bar, in the men's bathroom in a bar. There was the cubic, the volume of piss that was running through the like threads
Oh yeah.
of that carpet
Mhm.
alone
Mhm.
makes me so unhappy. If you are a proprietor of a bar and you have carpet on your floors, you should be ashamed.
That should be a health code violation.
In the I mean, I'll take it on the like main floor. That's fine, right? But like in the bathroom where the pee-pee goes, and fellas, come here. We do need to aim better. Hey, fellas, PSA. I've been checking, and we ain't aiming quite well enough.
Just sit down. What the hell is the problem?
We got a little bit of hubris going on with the fellas and their aim. I think we need to go. We all need to take a trip out to the country, go out to the shooting range, and start practicing our aim a little bit. Because I'm gonna tell you, it's based on the puddles I've been having to step in order to go take a piss. The puddles, y'all. The puddles.
I mean, if we're calling out, I think we're gonna call out the women folk for doing that. I'm not gonna sit on the toilet seat because it's dirty, and then I'm gonna piss all over the toilet seat thing. We're not doing that anymore either.
Not as often.
Not as often.
Not as much of an issue as men being disgusting.
No,
But
that's true.
if I walk in,
Well, that was
targeted.
It's
That
fine
was
when I say it.
That was a read. Yeah. As a non-binary person, if I walk into a place that has gendered restrooms, I am a woman.
Yeah.
Never
For like
ever use a men's bathroom.
They do
I'm gonna
seem
be
a little
honest.
dirtier. Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes when I see single user restrooms and I see there's a man and a woman, I'm gonna take that woman's bathroom because
yeah.
like y'all,
She
the
cleans
puddles. Like I didn't want a water feature inside the like bathroom.
A hose. There's just a hose in the corner that you just.
Yeah, his name's Derek, and Derek needs to like go back to school. Go back to jail with Derek. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm joined today by Iowa's starting lines dispatcher of electric mail, Amie Rivers. Hello, Amie.
Hello, Zachary.
And the titan of the internet playground, starting lines social strategist, weighing in at 3 tons of raw and electrical muscle. Hello, Avery.
Hey.
How are y'all doing today? This is the first week we're all back. We all took a little bit of time over the course of the last 3 weeks. How are y'all feeling alive, alert, awake, enthusiastic?
I don't think so. Avery?
I got my chocolate milk, so I'm doing okay.
All right.
Got your chocolate milk. Got your chocolate
We'll
milk.
ramp it up though for you. Yeah.
You got your chocolate milk. We got some stories. Let's get to it. First story today, a federal judge has issued a preliminary injunction against key portions of Iowa's SF 496. For those of us who don't keep track of bill numbers, that's the state's controversial Don't Say Gay law. The judge found that the law's book ban provision and restrictions related to LGBTQ plus content were unconstitutional, ruling that students and teachers would face irreparable harm. That's a quote. If these sections remained in effect, when I think about this bill, I remember the Des Moines Register's kind of survey of Iowa schools asking kind of like which districts banned what books. I mean, I think they had some really good information on kind of what kinds of books were really were experiencing these bans. But I was just so surprised by like how widely they varied. Right, because the direction from the state was so undercooked, if you will, many school districts were having to kind of like, based on their legal counsel, what they thought was defensible under the new statute, we're having to like kind of cobble together, right? Like, well, I guess this, but not that. Is this, yes, the picture of Oscar Wilde's the picture of Dorian Gray, a little too gay for our kids, but we're gonna let in Huckleberry Finn with all of its problems, right? It was a really tough bill to enforce.
I mean, I grew up in a family of educators, so like when SF 496 was passed, it was a huge deal because like my sister had graduated from college and she was teaching in Iowa, and I like immediately when that law was passed, she was like, well, I don't want to be here anymore because she got in trouble once for talking about me in her classroom, and she had just briefly mentioned, she had just briefly mentioned that like she had a sibling who was queer, and I think a student must have just like gone home and talked about it, and then there was a parent who got mad at her, and she almost got like in big trouble for talking about me in her classroom. My entire like up until this point career has been updates on this very bad law.
So you're glad for this update then, because not only did they take the book portion out, but I think almost more importantly for a lot of the kids who were sort of worried if they had to ask for accommodations, they took a lot of that out as well. I think the pronoun thing stayed in according to that Little Village article, but the rest of it. So if you are requesting to use a bathroom that makes you more comfortable, that's not something that a judge says they have to tell the parents about now. So that's good. That's going to keep kids safe in that really vulnerable young state if they're worried about what their parents are going to say or do to them if they request these things at school. So that's really a good thing. I know that Brenna Bird says they're looking at ways to appeal, but they've already done that once. So this has technically been injuncted twice. So basically you have to still find another way to get around it. So hopefully it sticks.
And calling it a victory, right? I think you're making a good point, right? That's not the story here, right? Still not protected now as if a student asks for a teacher or an administrator to use a new pronoun while they're at school. That will be a mandatory reporter feature here. But this is a huge win for gender sexuality alliances, gay straight alliances at schools in Iowa, right? That they will be able to continue their work of trying to support kids during a really critical time in their development. So obviously a really important story that we're going to be following, that I hope everyone else is following too. What do you guys make of the kind of school district response to some of this? I mean, I think a lot of school districts now, when the courts got involved, were kind of like, well, let's wait it out. Let's kind of see how see what comes out of these cases. But prior to that, right, it was because it was delegated to, so much of the interpretation was delegated to school districts, despite school districts were saying to the Department of Education, like, hey, can you guys give us some direction on this? We want to make sure we're not going to get sued. But this, as we saw, the Iowa Department of Education was really reluctant to offer guidance on like how to begin interpreting, how to begin working with these regulations. And the outcome was that the state, after all these books got banned, the Reynolds administration said, "Oh well, actually, these school districts are going way out of their way to ban books. This is not how we would have interpreted it, right? Because after saying like,
Right.
yes, we will sue you, but we're not going to set the goalpost. When school districts were like, all right, well, we got to be, we don't want to get sued, so we got to like maintain a pretty strict code here. I always found that to be like a really unsatisfying outcome there.
Yeah, they're not trying to actually like give schools real direction. They were just trying to instill fear in them. Like,
Right.
Go as far as you feel like you need to go, because like our whole goal is to like make it, so that gay people do not feel safe either working in a school or being in a school. And by extension, like we're going to try to, do this to society as well. And they have with other bills down the line. Like the entire goal was never to provide really good direction to schools. Like if it was, they absolutely would have put those directions in the bill.
It's almost like they were trying to like shirk some of the blame, because obviously like it's been a shitstorm since this law was passed of like, what the hell do we do? Nobody knows what's going on. And it really could have gone either way with the schools. Like they could have, taken a better safe than sorry approach and just done like sweeping changes just to try to cover all their bases. Or what a lot of them did was just like, okay, like I guess we'll just keep doing what we're doing, and then if something happens, something, you know what I mean? Because like, number one, they probably didn't have the time or the staff to like do all that they thought they should have done, or done all the interpretation that the state wanted them to do. But it almost feels like the state was trying to be like, if any huge problems arise because of changes made to schools because of this bill, we want that blame to be placed on schools rather than government. Like just because of how vague it is, and especially with like the Reynolds administration being like, well, they're doing more than we wanted them to do, and it's like, you never told them what you wanted them to do.
Right.
So,
I was just looking at the Des Moines Register has a list of the kind of 10 most banned books. This is from 2024, so it's a little bit out of date, but many of these books still apply, right? There was books you'll recognize, like the 13 Reasons Why, books like The Handmaid's Tale, and oddly enough, The Color Purple, which I always found to be an odd one on this list. And then, of course, our favorite, internet's John Green's book, Looking for Alaska. It's a pretty like harmless young adult novel, but somehow always seems to top some of these lists.
What's the problem with that? Like, what are they targeting in that one?
Oh, that's a great question. According to the Register, there were 76 districts removed the book, and 25 reshelved the book after the injunction. Looking for Alaska, a 16-year-old boy named Miles, who's obsessed with famous last words, leaves his safe life at home for boarding school. In this coming-of-age young adult novel, Miles becomes infatuated with a female classmate named Alaska, who later dies, and Miles and his friends seek details about her final days as they process her death and wrestle with the meaning of life.
I read Looking for Alaska when I was probably like 12 or 13. And it doesn't have like, I think there's like a queer character or two in there, but it doesn't center like a queer storyline. I think the reason why it was banned is because like there are like some sex scenes in the book, and the way that Alaska dies is she complete suicide. And so it's like, just I think it's more along those lines. But like I don't know, I feel like banning something like Looking for Alaska just shows that like this isn't just about like erasing LGBTQ plus people from schools. It's about like controlling what kids in schools are reading, what they are aware of, what kind of education they get, because they deem it wrong or amoral or whatever, even though it's like completely natural parts of life that they'll figure out, either way.
I think librarians should be trusted with these materials because they know how to pick out books for kids depending not only on their age, but their temperament, right? We know kids that could handle stuff like that or kids that have gone through stuff like that and would appreciate reading a perspective like that at a certain age, and kids that just could not, you know? And I think like a librarian is somebody that sees those kids all the time and is uniquely positioned to be like, yes, I think that that's a good book for you. Or maybe that's a book that you read like in a couple years, you know, and not put it at the level of legislators who have no idea what kids are going through these days.
And kids are supposed to be able to like be in conversation with the adults around them about the things that they read. So like when I read Looking for Alaska, was I probably a little bit too young to read a book with those kinds of themes? Yeah, but like I just asked questions about it because I read it because I had like a higher reading level, so I was able to like understand those books. And I remember just like being confused about like what exactly was going on.
Right.
And I just like asked my parents questions about it. Like and they answered honestly. And I was also a child of the internet. So I just like looked it up on Tumblr. Like kids are supposed to have access to these different areas of education in order to understand stuff that might be a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
Books are a really safe place for a kid to begin trying to wrestle through some really big questions about who they are, what it means to live, what it means to be, to live in the year 2025. And I think the challenging thing here, right, is it like takes the power away from teachers, from parents, from librarians to begin helping shape some of those conversations. You talk to a room of fifth graders and you're going to find that like developmentally fifth graders are all over the place. Same thing with high school, ninth graders. I mean, the reality is like age designations are actually a really difficult and unuseful way of like kind of staging the development of a child just because, but we need to do it. We've got, we live in a society. We got to make some steps forward. But I always, the idea, books therefore become like this really great vehicle to like help begin assess, I guess, is, unfortunately some kids are just exposed to, they've had tragedy strike their immediate family, their immediate friend group. At an early age. I mean, having avenues for them to be able to deal with that in a safe environment. I don't know. It seems like a net win for the child. It seems like a net win for the family, for the parent, and for the society as a whole. And just to have for us to like, rather than devolving these conversations and grounding them in the like context and communities that are trying to have them. Or instead, like I think Avery, like you said, right? We're going to we're going to Des Moines. We're going to drive all the way to Des Moines. We're going to pass some bill that most of us haven't read, and that's going to be the final word on what on my child and what my child gets in there.
Right. And it's just the uncuriousness of the Republican Party in general. Please don't decide for yourselves, right? Please don't decide for yourselves, kids. Please don't decide for yourselves, parents and educators. Please don't decide for yourselves, city councils. I mean, there's a theme, right? We know best, and we're going to tell you exactly what to do. Like, that's really seems like the road that they've been going down for a while.
Especially in the realm of education, like knowing what my sister did in college, like seeing her schoolwork and seeing the work that she put into like becoming an educator, the lack of trust in a teacher's and an educator's expertise is also very central here because not only do teachers understand like the ABCs of teaching a child, they understand those kind of developmental nuances that of what kids are aware of and what kids can be aware of and how their brains process information, and restricting access to certain materials because a Republican deems a subject too heavy for a child to understand is not understanding of how children actually function.
Believe it or not, the average Iowa teacher is not pushing Sarah J. Maas's Court of Thorns and Roses on your 8-year-old.
Right.
Believe it or not.
Right.
I will say, as an aside, it was funny when some of these lists were coming out from school districts like in Iowa City. I did notice those Sarah J. Maas books on them, and I was like, okay, if we're gonna if we're gonna start banning books, look, this is as we're a pro Moss household, and for me and mine. But if we had to ban like 8 books, I'm gonna say like Court of Thorns and Roses, we might be coming for your fairy smut.
But also, like, no librarian is gonna, like, no school librarian with a degree in being a school librarian is gonna be like, you know what, these 8-year-olds would love to read fairy smut.
Right.
But you know what? You know what they say. You remember that poem. First they came for the fairy smut.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't. I wasn't reading fairy smut at the time, and so I said nothing. And then they came for the dragon smut. But I don't read dragon smut.
And then they came for hockey smut.
Yeah, unfortunately, they came for the hockey smut, and we icebreakers. Let's go.
That was where the line was drawn.
I feel like I need to read more books, you guys.
I feel that's not what you should take
in
this conversation.
Smut?
You gotta read more smut.
I'm a firm believer that everybody needs to read more smut because I grew up reading and writing fan fiction on Tumblr. And
were you an AO3 baddie?
Oh yeah. I wouldn't call myself a baddie because I was 13, but
oh no.
but I do think the fact that I was aware of smut at a very young age is the reason why I'm a very well-adjusted adult.
There you go.
Read more smut.
We should explore that more. I think we have to explore that more.
Everybody needs to read more smut.
Pro smut. Smut advocate. Avery Staker.
Yep.
Second story, Republican Representative Megan Jones has publicly accused the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation of improper surveillance at the state capitol. Jones claimed that DCI used geofencing software to monitor mobile devices at the Capitol as a test before using the technology to investigate student athletes for illegal sports betting. The DPS responded saying that while they used the technology for building, they used the technology in the building for demonstrative purposes. No personally identifiable information was accessed. So here's, this is an odd story for us, right? Because we don't cover a lot of sports gambling stories, and we don't cover a ton of
This is not a sports gambling podcast.
I mean, if DraftKings wants to sponsor, brother, we'll take your money. But
get half off on FanDuel.
So the reason I wanted to talk about this one is so sports betting, online sports betting, it's like is still in its infancy in the state of Iowa. It is already producing billions, literally billions of dollars in revenue off the backs of Iowans, right? Through sports betting. And the way they are trying to regulate it is using this geofencing technology. It's a way of making sure that if you're betting that you're doing so in the state of Iowa, right? That there's like a little bit of regulation. And for the industry, right, for regulators, they've been thinking about this as like when you access a DraftKings application, right, you're doing so is not unlike entering into a bar, right, or entering into a casino, right? That you're showing an ID, you're like proving you're verifying some information. But what we found, I think that was a year ago, 2 years ago, when a bunch of student athletes at our universities got found out that they were placing bets on some games that they were participating in.
Mm-hmm.
It was this huge scandal, a scandal that ultimately got, in a large part, thrown out because of the use of this geofencing technology. Investigators geofenced the athletic facilities and said, like, we're going to track transactions that are occurring, when you're at the Hawkeye, you're in Hawkeye athletics facilities, you're in Cyclone athletics facilities. And we're kind of like spying on these student athletes who just happen to be making some bets, both on their own accounts with their information. And also, there were like in these reports, them using the phone numbers of parents, right, to try to throw off the scent, I suppose, of investigators. Super interesting, but it's become this huge scandal, right? Because it's the big bad DCI, Department of Criminal Investigations for the state, going after these student athletes, these poor student athletes that just happen to be they're just playing some games on the internet. Just playing some games on the internet. And then this Iowa legislature found out, oh, you mean you were testing this technology, this evil technology that's taking the bread out of our poor student athletes, and then you were doing it on the Capitol? How? Oh, what a scandal! What a scandal! What do y'all make of this?
Outside of the realm of sports betting, one thing I'm not going to do is trust cops to like not misuse technology. So like if they're using this technology for this, it means they're comfortable using it for other things, especially on Capitol grounds, and protests happen on Capitol grounds, and people like us work on Capitol grounds. So like outside of further down the line, outside of the realm of sports betting, like being comfortable using technology like this shows a level of comfort with misusing it, or maybe like in our eyes it's a misuse, in their eyes it's not. But there's one thing we know about a police state: they like to surveil their people.
Right, exactly. And they'll do it if they can get away with it, right? I think the reason this lawsuit was thrown out was entirely because it was a warrantless search. You can't just go as a police officer and rifle through, for example, if we're using the example of students inside a stadium. You can't just go into the locker room, right, and like bust them all open. In the same fashion, they're going into basically, student phones and busting those open. So obviously a judge is going to be like, yeah, that's against your, I believe, 4th Amendment, right? Maybe 5th. I gotta look up the amendments. But yeah, it basically comes down to like, do we want, right, that level of policing? And clearly, if the legislators don't even want to tolerate it,
if Republican legislators,
right?
If there's one thing that like might bridge some of the gap, it's not wanting to be surveilled, not wanting our digital lives to be surveilled, because
what a concept.
That is a whole new, like, I've done a lot of like reading and thinking and trying to be aware of this, but like the way that we exist now, half of it is online. Like a good chunk of our lives are digitized.
Totally.
And if we have like constitutional rights for our apartment, like a police officer can't come to my apartment building and be like, I need to get in here. Like I can say no, we should have those same rights and those same protections with our digital lives. And technology like this gets into, some kind of gray area of what those rights actually protect.
Right.
Totally cuts against it. I'm glad y'all brought up the kind of protest angle of this, right? The extent to which, because we already know that law enforcement tracks social media accounts. In Iowa City, we've seen quite a bit of that appear in court documents. Folks are figuring out what, cell phone, they're tracking cell phones of folks that are going to protest, right? That are attending protests. It's, we have to, we have this incredible technology at our disposal, and the extent to which the state is implementing it against us, I think, is a really important faculty or piece to like be tracking as we, as we're moving forward.
It's encouraging to at least see that like some people in DCI were pushing back against this. I think it's good that they're, possibly trying to open up an investigation there. But it is also good that some people in DCI were at least aware that it was probably illegal.
And now we're taking a little bit of a trip into the counties. For our third story, a North Iowa woman, Ashley Bartles of Riceville, is facing legal troubles for alleged harassment. Bartles has been charged with 4 counts of first-degree harassment for allegedly directing, quote, derogatory names and abusive epithets towards a female victim regarding her sexuality and gender. Bartles' arraignment has been continued to May 20th with advocacy group North Iowa Fights Back organizing a protest to support the victims. Amie, you were the one who told me about this story, and you heard about it, I think, from a reader, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So a reader wanted to like bring more attention to this story because she thought that this wasn't getting publicized. She is with North Iowa Fights Back on this. So basically like sort of told me, this was April 4th, 4 LGBTQ individuals were targeted, harassed, and physically assaulted at the American Inn in Osage. And then this woman now faces 4 charges of assault, including under Iowa's hate crime statute, as well as drug charges. So she admitted to directing apparently anti-LGBTQ slurs at the victims, as well as death threats who this woman says were just peacefully visiting friends in a public space.
Yoink. It is hard to legally define something as a hate crime. So the fact that it seems like it was pretty cut and dry that they are putting this underneath like a hate crime statute is like kind of a big deal, because a lot of things have to like work out legally in order for something to be officially legally defined as a hate crime.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when I see something that is actually legally defined as a hate crime, I'm like, oh yeah, like that is what that was.
Sure.
Yeah.
To even get charged in the first place and then to get them upgraded to hate crime. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And oh, by the way, I know this will shock you, but this is not this woman's first rodeo. Ashley Bartles of Riceville has been convicted for assaulting a Howard County Sheriff's deputy, including spitting on him and threatening to shoot him in the head. And then in 2 years later, she was convicted for threatening a female coworker at an Osage bar and then preventing her from calling 911. So she probably has some issues to work out there. We hope she does.
Well, I think like for me, I'm reading. You sent me this article, and we're still coming out of the Iowa legislative session where in a 7-day period, a bill was introduced to take trans people out of the Iowa Civil Rights Act, right? Taking away things like housing protections from this group of folks. It becomes like all the more important for us to really be paying attention to the way that, we are showing up for our family, for our friends, for our neighbors. Given that, in this case, right, this person is getting, these 4 people that were attacked, maybe getting some justice, but, I don't know. The stakes seem important here. The stakes seem high here, and just the more we can show up for incidents where our family is attacked, or our friends are attacked, or our neighbors are attacked, it's important. I just wanted to foreground.
And with every hate crime designation, there's 800 million thousand more interpersonal acts of, homophobia or transphobia or racism or whatever else that have happened that don't necessarily reach like the heights of a legal case like this. Like I can't count on one hand the amount of times that like I've been called a slur somewhere in public. Yeah. And so the fact that, we've seen all this enabling, all this anti-LGBTQ rhetoric from the highest levels of our state government, this is a product of that. This is what that comes from.
Yeah. It's not in a vacuum.
And as a bonus for this episode, I wanted to take us to Indiana, where the short corn grows. Columnist Daniel Finney of Iowa is calling out sports media for how they're covering the WNBA, particularly the Caitlin Clark-Angel Reese rivalry. Did you guys get a chance to read this column from Dan? He argues that media's fixation on personal conflicts between female athletes plays into harmful stereotypes and distracts from appreciating the high level of basketball being played. I'm joined now by Amie Rivers, my favorite mind on b-ball, particularly on the rise of Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. I wanted to hear from you, kind of like what you made of this column, kind of how you're responding to this, because there was a Sports Illustrated. I'll include the notes also to a Sports Illustrated column talking about kind of the way that it seems the WNBA is playing up the kind of matchup between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. They had that kind of really famous interpersonal conflict. Yeah, it's literally the I forgot about the hand gesture.
Yeah.
Angel Reese gave her like a really
because she always Because Caitlin always did that. Yeah.
Oh, that's what
she was giving it back. You have to know all the context. Yeah.
She's dishing it back. Yeah.
So, but walk me through, maybe how do you explain this catch me up for those of us that don't follow WNBA as closely? Take us into this story.
First of all, I thought we agreed on lesbian WNBA correspondent Amie Rivers.
Sorry, lesbian or intrepid
Caitlin
lesbian basketball correspondent.
Yes. So I will say, to start it off, like, yes, Daniel's right. Like this column pretty much hits most of the beats that I was going to hit. The rivalry, if it was happening in the NBA, would be an absolute nothing burger, right? Like this is like, you know, people get technical fouls, people get flagrant fouls all the time. It's not a huge deal. I think we're making it a bigger deal because it's women, honestly. Like a lot of folks still think, especially if they're new to the league, that this league is different than other sports leagues in that we should be treating women differently and women should be performing differently on the court and they should not be doing certain things on the court and they should not be like fighting or if they're fighting, they should do it for our benefit. You know, like there's a lot of problematic things that go along with watching people play sports if they're women. And a lot of that is wrapped up in this. So, but at the same time, you're the WNBA, you want that the eyeballs on a game that was honestly a 40-point blowout. Like it was not close for the second half. You're going to play up the rivalries. You're going to encourage that. The sports writers want the eyeballs on their articles. They're going to encourage that. Daniel is correct in saying, like, you don't actually have to do that. There were actually a lot of cool things about that game that you could have talked about. DeWanna Bonner making like a whatever stack DeWanna Bonner got that game. I'm forgetting now. But the point is, like, take the problematic stuff out of there. Like, we don't need it. Like, let that be like the thing that the smaller blogs, the terrible blogs talk about. Like, we don't really have to do that. But I think the second point, and Daniel doesn't address this, but he very well might, is that there's an actual racism problem right now happening, and it involves this rivalry. And it involves a lot of Indiana Fever fans that find themselves defending Caitlin Clark in racist ways that they shouldn't be. And that should absolutely be called out. And actually it's starting to be, you know, there's starting to be a lot of noise around this. You know, I'm seeing it on Instagram and other things like that. And the WNBA has said, I believe it was last week, that they had this new initiative, the Stop Hate Initiative, where they were really going to like put an investigative procedure in this for these fans that are slurring these racial epithets out at Angel Reese. And to her credit, Caitlin Clark is also somewhat calling this out, you know, I think vaguely, you know, fans should be respectful kind of thing, but it's a start. I think Caitlin's learning how to, I think, be more vocal for her Black teammates. So I hope that continues too.
Right. Like, I think there's a content creator on TikTok. Her name's Coach Jackie J.
Yeah,
she covers a lot of. I love Coach Jackie J. And she brought up a really good point of like the term rivalry, and like, you know, in this context, like kind of Daniel's use of the word cat fights is a little reductive. It's kind of dangerously reductive because like the reality of the situation is that Angel Reese is in an unsafe working environment when she steps into that Indiana Fever arena and when she steps into any WNBA arena that is aware of the rivalry that's going on and may share the same sentiments as the Fever fans that are hurling racial slurs at her. Like she is working in an unsafe environment when stuff like that is allowed and not taken seriously and used as a marketing ploy. And the WNBA employs a lot of Black women. So something needs to be done yesterday in order to address this specifically. Because what should happen is like if a fan is hurling racial slurs at any player, you're done. Like you're banned from that arena, you're banned from WNBA games. Like the severity of a punishment of something like that should match the severity of the situation. And right now what's hanging in the balance is Angel Reese and players like her is their safety.
I really like the kind of points y'all are making to kind of tease out the difference. So like when I think about like sports stories that you read about, like the Joe Frazier v. Muhammad Ali, Canada v Russia, Canada v Russia hockey, or USA v Russia in anything, right? They're like rivalries and Hawkeyes, Cyclones, right? In some ways, like rivalries are this like kind of ubiquitous narrative device as we kind of think about this hugely important source of entertainment in our lives. But what y'all are teasing out is that there's something a little bit different that's happening here, right? That there's like when we're talking, yes, the Hawkeye Cyclone game can get out of control, right? Some of that fandom can get out of control, but like that there's a specificity. Can y'all tease that out a little bit more? Because I think that's such an important point. That like we're not. I don't think either of y'all are saying is that like the idea of narrative rivalry is like in and of itself this terrible thing, right? But there's a specific kind of spin that out for me a little bit, because I think that's such an important
take out the racism and take out the sort of gender specific, like we want to see a cat fight. Like if you're actually treating it like these are two adults engaging in a sport that they love and want to do well and are trying to perform at the highest level, just like men, treat it like that. Like if you're going to say, oh my gosh, Angel Reese is going for this point, and is Caitlin Clark and her team going to be able to stop her? Fine. Right. Let's make it all above board. Like let's take out the weird racial and gender specific shit that is just bringing down the game.
I remember in the March Madness tournament when they were both playing, kind of the kickoff to all this attention that's on women's sports was that March Madness tournament. And I was talking to my own family members, my own very, very progressive, very liberal family members. And some of them were saying things like, oh, like these fights between Angel Reese and Caitlin, like Angel Reese is just so like unclassy. You know what I mean? Like it seems really, and I'm like, and I stopped them because I was like, well, let's think about this. Like, first of all, they're 2 years out from being teenagers.
True. Yeah.
And also like we've talked about trash talk, rivalry, the kind of headbutting, that's just part of the nature of being in competition.
Yeah.
And assigning that judgment to Angel Reese is that's the issue, is this is a completely natural, completely, celebrated part of competitions, of sports, but there's this very targeted language specifically on Angel Reese that is really dangerous and needs to be nipped in the bud, like
immediately
now.
Called out. Yeah,
right,
because the league is better than that. I mean, this league is also, we want to say, yes, treat the league like any other league, but also the league is different than any other league. Like the league is very progressive. The league was Black Lives Matter shirts in 2020, right? The league has been on the forefront of like calling this out and like bringing people to the forefront that have not usually been at the forefront. There are a lot of Black women in administrative positions making a ton of money in this league. They are, cognizant that they have a majority, lesbian base sometimes. Like they are very much trying to be a league where this is accepted, this is celebrated. Like, and I think that that's why it's also really, really important that we call out these elements very quickly.
We don't want this to become part of the culture. We don't want, because WNBA isn't a new league. It's been around for a while, but all this attention on it is very new and very fresh. And if the marketing tactics are these like kind of dirty PR, if they're not holding all of these truths, if they're not being aware of these nuances of their players, especially of the consciousness of their fan base, that doesn't need to be part of the WNBA culture if they want to stand out, if they want to be different. The attention came about in a very natural, very, great way of recognizing the talent of female athletes. And we don't stay recognizing the talent and the drive and the passion of female athletes and make that your marketing tactic. Don't play these dirty games that sacrifice the safety of your players.
And isn't that why you tune in to this podcast?
Because
aren't we, isn't it feels really rewarding to be Iowa's finest sports podcast.
Right.
Now,
Off on FanDuel.
now with two stories, 2 sports stories in the can, I think we can successfully say
We are a sports podcast.
we are your new favorite sports podcast. That was another episode of Cornhole Champions. If you like the show, please rate it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. We're really looking to try to expand this Iowa audience, expand these the kind of attention to these Iowa stories. So while you're at it, sign up for my newsletter at cornholechampions.substack.com and get these episodes straight to your inbox when they drop Wednesday mornings. We're also working to launch our YouTube channel, so please subscribe at Iowa Starting Line on YouTube. Cornhole Champions is a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. This podcast is produced by me with music from Avery Mossman. Cornhole Champions is a proud member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. We'll see you with a new episode next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zachary Oren Smith.
I'm Amie Rivers.
And I'm Avery Staker.
Thanks for listening.